In the Tower of London late at night, the ghost of Anne Boleyn walks, I declare. Poor Anne Boleyn was once King Henry's wife, until he made the headsman barber heir. Ah, yes, he did a wrong long years ago, and she comes up at night to tell him so. With her head tucked underneath her arm, she walks the bloody tower. With her head tucked underneath her arm at the midnight hour. Sorry. Hello. Welcome to my channel. My name is David Novak. So, this is going to be something of a response video to a video done by Bookless Pete. Hey! The cat is pulling the books down from the shelf. Hold on. Cut it out. Sorry. So, I'll give you the long and short of it. And this is not really, this is using the video by Bookless Pete as an excuse to go off in my own direction. Now, Pete cuts out when he needs to take a sip of coffee. I cut when I have to go prevent a cat from pulling the books down. So, the matter, and I will link Pete's video in the description box. The matter is that he made a bargain with, I guess, an author, publisher, to accept a free copy of a book in return for giving it an honest review. And he felt that having read the book, he didn't really want to give an honest review because he really disliked the book. He wanted to give no review, really. So this brings all kinds of things to the fore. And I'm going to go a little bit down memory lane. Let me show you first my non-fit press books. So in the year, 2000 or 1999, I put out The Requiem. This is a big book. Self-pub, non-fit press. Let's see if I can show you the logo, non-fit press. It was my masterwork, I felt, and so I wanted to get it out there, did a self-pub job, but I commit no small errors, if you will, so I decided to put out other books. And so the next book that I published was, and I did these one per year, was a book that had been written prior to that, a book of sonnets. And I've talked about this. I wanted to put that one out because I had a blurb from Richard Wilbur on the back. Now he said before that, without even thinking about blurbs or publishing, I had sent my sonnets to him, and he sent me a nice note back which had a sentence with a negative part and a positive part. So when it came time for me to be publishing, I asked, or I beseeched him if I could use his words, and I did a ... Steve Donahue is a book reviewer, and he talks about how it's fairly common in the publishing industry for a publisher to pull out the positive sentence. And I think a lot of reviewers, even if they write a negative review, they try to include a positive sentence in there that can be blurbable. And he graciously consented to allow me to use a portion of what he wrote. So that was the second one that I published. The third one that I published was Embodiment and Release. That was actually the first book that I put together. So this came out 2001. Yeah, because this was actually 1999, though it's copyright 2000, because I thought that was important. So then, and then I was planning to put out the Soul's Refinement, but the events of 9/11, September 11th, 2001 occurred, and I wrote a book of poems responding to it, and that was against holy war, and so I rushed that out. Now, I don't think that I was, for the Requiem, I was pretty active in trying to promote it, and for all of these books, I was in the Chicago area, a presence on or in the literary scene. So when there was a poetry fest at the Chicago Public Library, I was there with my table, with my books. I would give readings here and there. There were other kinds of fairs and stuff that I went to. I even managed to get, I don't know what is the word, inveigle, invitations to private events and so forth, to have the chance to promote and sell books. Back in those days, Barnes & Noble was really keen on bringing in authors to their store, and I gave readings at a couple of Barnes & Nobles, that kind of thing. But I think after the first big book that I published, I don't think I was too active in the poetry, because I think poetry has a reputation as a hard sell for good reason, and I think I knew that. And besides, I was much more invested in a playwriting career at that time, and so I think that was where I devoted my efforts. I say this as one who does not remember, because I did not, unfortunately, keep a log of everything I did. A friend said, you should write a journal about all this so you know what happened. I didn't, and I sort of wish that I had done. Well, when this book came out, I decided to go all the way and try to promote it and get it out there. I by that point in time, I had learned a thing or two about how the publishing industry worked. Had a press kit assembled, had different mailing lists and so forth, and gave it a fairly good push. I don't think much ever came of it. I mean, I know I had a couple of reviews here and there, and then there were different, I don't know what they are, publisher adjacent sites where they would kind of print something about you, but they would just take your copy and put it there. And I think I have most of that somewhere in the basement. But what Pete's video called to my mind was, there was a poetry website in Chicago, based out of Chicago, called chicagopoetry.com, I think, and it was largely run by a man named Chuck Laity, I think his name was, Charles Laity. And I know that he was a recipient of my book. I wanted a review. I don't recall there being any kind of bartering. I think that I just sent him the book, There was no deal made. But at some point thereafter, he emailed me or something and said, I don't know that I really want to review this book. Of course, I was the typical author, just hungry for that exposure or what have you. Exposure is what they try to give artists instead of money in the art world. And I think I probably said something to him. Look, just write what you think. Give it an honest review, something like that. I am sure that I figured by that point that he didn't like the book. The old saying used to be, just make sure you spell the name right. I mean, come to think of it, when I think at least one of the reviews for Sonnets, they did not spell the name right. I mean, it's just funny, but people involved in the publishing world, and particularly the poetry world, are busy. They have a lot of other obligations, and they don't have time for stuff like that. But he did put out a review. He did lots of reviews of lots of different books on his website, and I think he had some wonderful deal where the hosting was free, and I think that deal elapsed at some point, and so it all disappeared. But I got a review. It was a negative review. It was an over-the-top negative review, and I thought I would use this opportunity to share it with my BookTube friends. At the time, I printed it out, and I guess I wasn't aware of what setting I had it on, so it printed out in a whole bunch of sheets. It's really just a small review, but I thought, well, I didn't watch the printer. When I went to the printer, there it was. It was probably at some job, so I didn't want to do it again. And so I just kept it as is. I should have, like I say, redone it, reformatted it. Now this rocket was part of the original thing, and you can see Against Hollow Words, poetry by David Novak. Against Holy War, 2002, non-fit press, reviewed by Laity. So let me read you the review. I have not really gone through this thoroughly, so I may stumble a bit. So, as I say, keep in mind, we're talking about this book, which is real small. It contains 50 poems or 50 pages of poetry. And he makes sidelong reference to this big book. As I say, I had been appearing at poetry fests and events. I think even some kind of event organized by Chuck Laity himself on somewhere at like Garfield Park Conservatory or something like that. My memory is sketchy. Let us let the man speak. This book, this 62-page book, has been collecting dust on my desk for a month or so, crying for my attention, accompanied by an email urging me to give it honest review. Holy moly. To be honest, I've been trying to put off reviewing anything written by David Novak because, quite sincerely, I find his work to be the worst example of forced, formulated stinkola, and I mean pew, I've ever seen. His work is completely absent of rhythm, so god-awful bad that I'll admit it, I've never been able to completely read through one of his books, especially not his big, thick, torturous epic. It's a shame, too, because his books are really well designed, perfect bound. You hold it in your hand and you think, what a cool looking book. But then you open the pages and you read a few poems and you have to scratch your head and say, huh? Is he serious? Is this a parody of poetry? Because the poems read like a 7th grade writing assignment, and that's being nice about it. Granted, it's hard to write on a religious theme without sounding like a preachy Bible salesman. But lines like, a friend of mine this past September was murdered by a man depressed who snuffed life's ember with wish to die, sound offensive, sound to me like the disgraceful selling out of an American tragedy. Did 2,800 people die in order to sell David Novak books? I don't care if David Novak is hugging his puppy on the back cover. I don't think his, there it is. I don't think his new offering is cute, not in the slightest. These haikus or cans, I think he meant koans, or whatever the hell they're supposed to be, are not significant, do not contain any insight beyond the author's sloppy rhyme schemes, are no more profound than the ravings of someone ringing your doorbell on a Sunday morning trying to give you a free watchtower. I usually slam the door and say, shove off when that happens. And for this shameful marketing of humdrum to have come out so soon after September 11, well, it just goes to show how little effort, what little thought was put into this $13 pile of paper. Oh yeah, $13, $12.95. So this, it actually was a point of pride for me that this book was published 6 months after the events of September 11th. We'll talk more about that. This $13 pile of paper. Yeah, Novak's got the answer to this entire mess, all right. Quote, subdued eroticism of those who attack, 'twere better that they go and love, which is their lack, unquote. You know, there are a lot of extremely talented writers in this city who are struggling to get their books out. Yet Novak popped this thing out like the grease inside of a zit. And because it looks so pretty, it's probably sitting on the shelves of big chain bookstores, making it appear as if Novak is one of Chicago's top poets. But hey, look inside that pretty book. For one thing, the metaphors have been done 1,000,000 times before. Quote, a heron lands upon the pond, the water ripples, as he takes notice of the front and takes a tipple. That front, of course, was lack of proofreading there. It should have been frond, but one expects this from reviews. And if the thous and twers don't make you feel like you're reading The Night Before Christmas, then certainly the shoveling down your throat of unoriginal sing-songs about God, Buddha, and war will nauseate you before you can finish Against Holy War. It might be good reading on the toilet, 'cause it makes me want to dump. With brilliance like, though it may be I am untrue, it is not death, 'tis easy to begin anew, like counting breath. David Novak should realize he is not Milton, and he never will be. He should either give it the heck up or practice at a slam in order to find some energy. Poetry is a craft. It is not something you can create by closing your eyes, grabbing the first word that pops into your head, and then wrapping it up in a pretty package. At least, not in my opinion. I expect much, much more from Chicago poetry. C.J. Laity, that was the name that he went by. So, in his video, Pete was concerned that, I don't know, he might hurt the author's feelings. I have to say to Pete that an author is not going to be offended by something like this. There's an old poem by Ben Jonson, which I have up on the site somewhere. I can't remember it exactly, but something to the effect that it's titled to the critic or something. Your words of praise or dispraise are to me alike. The one doth not stroke me, nor the other strike. And for any writer, that is probably the effect, at least any writer that has achieved any kind of a balance. But I think, honestly, over-the-top praise is probably a lot harder to deal with than over-the-top dispraise. Years ago, Paul McCartney composed an oratorio, and he was very proud of it. And it was largely panned by critics. And I remember reading an interview with him, and he said it really hurt his feelings. And it kind of surprised me that somebody as big and important in the world of music as Paul McCartney would have had his feelings hurt by something like that. But he did. But I have to say, for me, it's been a touchstone that I can look back on, and actually it has become a happy memory. As with the case of the famous reviews that John Keats got for his poetry, who knows? This review may well make C.J. Laity's name infamous to posterity. One never can tell. Book reviewing is kind of an odd profession in that if you are a good book reviewer, you will not be remembered. But if you catch it wrong and you miss something like Edgar Allan Poe or what have you, and do it in a very colorful way such as this, then you will be remembered. I don't think any book reviewer wants to be remembered this way. Laity did, as I say, lots of reviews, but this was mine. And I would say most of the reviews at the site were entirely positive. Nowadays, people are getting all kinds of free products left and right for reviews. And I don't think even that there is any kind of a deal made with people, make it an honest review. I mean, that's kind of a weird archaism, probably still clinging to the world of books. I know countless cases of people getting offered dehumidifiers, refrigerators, drones, all kinds of things for the automobile. And in those cases, these companies that manufacture stuff want reviews so desperately. And they do not say it must be a honest review. They just want a review. And I would assume sort of unspoken there is most of these reviews are going to be positive. I don't think books are such a prize commodity that it's worth worrying about. If the deal was to give it an honest review, then give it an honest review and let it go at that. I see various booktubers getting free books all the time, and some feel obligated to review them if they can, and some don't. But I think, honestly, that it is selling oneself short to give up your precious time to read something just because somebody offers it to you free. It's the same thing with food. If you are an old person like me, you understand just because there is a buffet of free things that you can eat, that does not mean that you should be indulging in it. My time is more precious than that. You know, there was one of my favorite booktubers actually put a video up a while ago, and I won't identify him, and he genuinely is one of my favorite booktubers. And it was a mail haul. He said, "Oh, there's this package in the mail, and I've been waiting for this. It's just so amazing." And what it was a book, a free book, sent to him by the author, asking for a review. And he went into a spiel about it. He said, "You know, I'm just a guy who likes to read, and never, you know, not here nor there in my life, working at a lumber yard, and now look at this. Somebody has sent me a free book, and this." I'm not trying to disparage this man at all, but becoming part of the book promotional infrastructure is not a point of pride. It is, if anything, more likely selling one's self short. Now, I am not talking about, say, somebody who is a regular contributor to the Wall Street Journal and gets paid to do the job. That's a different matter. But if your only payment is a free book, you have really sold yourself short. This same book, I watched its progress because at the time I was watching a lot of BookTube. I think the book was titled Goyland or something. And this author was approaching everybody. He didn't approach me. My channel is not that big, and I don't really read much new stuff. And many of the people took that upon themselves, read the book and reviewed it, and I think it mostly got positive reviews. Very good. So that segues into the thought about promoting yourself. Back in 2000, I thought that the artist's job, the poet's job, was to try to get involved in self-promotion. And over time, my interest waned. You wind up dividing yourself, serving two masters, to put it biblically. Now, there is a former booktuber named Matt Wall who publishes his own poetry books, hustles, and even he has talked about the difficulty of wearing multiple hats. In my case, I came to realize that devoting myself to the one activity took me away from the other activity, which was the actual work of composition, of attending to the muse. And so I made my choice. It's a choice that one frequently has to make. And it has served me well. I've got a video going through all of my books, and I am satisfied. Of course, poets have always had to self-publish. In the US, we have the twin examples of, well, not twin because they're not the same, of Walt Whitman and Emily Dickinson. Both of those poets, or each of those poets, did everything they could in order to get their poetry out there in front of the reading public. Whitman, of course, was able to do a lot more than Dickinson could. Dickinson did what she could and took her tentative steps and then had to fall back somewhat. Years ago, when I worked in Evanston, I was not permitted to check out books from the Evanston Public Library, but I would go mill around the stacks, and I remember coming across a book that I wish I had jotted down the name of or something, because I've always remembered it, and it was a publisher's memoir. Now, there are so many publishers' memoirs out there, it's impossible to trace it. And I've looked, but Google does not help with this. And the guy had, I think, retired from a long life in publishing at a major house. And he began by talking about his initial introduction to the publishing world, and he went to work for another great personage of publishing. And he talked about this man, and he said this man was one of the great from the German era of publishing. I guess German publishing was a wonder back in the day. I don't know publishing history. And he said this publisher talked to him, and I think maybe a writer had come in, a poet or something, some nerdy guy or dweeby guy or something, and kind of weird and everything. And after he had left, this old publisher said, you know, these writers that we have to deal with can be I'm going to use my language, not what was in the book. They can be a frickin' pain in the ass. They're a heck of a lot of problem. They're difficult. They're demanding of your time. They hassle you. They have all these worries that wait, you know, all these neuroses, blah, blah, blah. And he said, but the thing you have to remember is that they are the reason why we exist. You can never let that out of your mind. The publishing industry, I think, has changed since those days. And now you have authors who are possibly promoters first. And I think you can see some of that in the books. Having a good social media following is great for some of the new breed of poets. So the world has changed, publishing has changed, but art has not changed, writing has not changed. In my particular sphere, poetry has not changed. And so One is called upon in life to make choices. And then to live with the consequences of those choices. I don't think the act of writing an honest review or not is such a big deal. People nowadays have thin skins. I remember one booktuber was talking about another booktuber and said some kind of comment about that booktuber and said something derogatory, something negative, and another booktuber posted a video and said, "Oh, how could so-and-so talk about so-and-so like that? Why, she has a family, she has children. Oh, and to say that her whatever is not good. Oh, people in the old days, I don't think had such thin skins about it. I mean, what was it? Forced formulated stinkola. I wanted to get back to something, but I can't remember what it was. Remember, I said, I'll get back to that. Oh, yeah. No, maybe. There are a lot of extremely talented writers in this city who are struggling to get their books out. Yet Novak popped this thing out like the grease inside of a zit. And because it looks so pretty, it's probably sitting on the shelves of big chain bookstores, making it appear as if Novak is one of Chicago's top poets. Well, yeah, sitting on the shelves of one or two Barnes and Nobles locally, maybe. As I say, they were open to that. But no, all these unsung poets struggling to get their books out, as though no effort was involved here. I mean, I was back in the day before print on demand existed. Getting a book out was quite a feat. You had to drum up money to do it. You had to find a designer to do this. You had to get the thing formatted and so forth. It really was not the easy thing it has become now. You've seen me talk about my Lulu books, where you have a ready-made template and you just copy and paste, and there you go. So this thought, that it was just popped out like as it is kind of funny. And other poets in the city did indeed publish books. It was not inconceivable. This is my first book, and it's very slim. And it was actually actively patterned upon books of this size that were published by a local press called Tia Chucha Press. I had a number of their books, which I no longer have, or I would show them to you. Poems Across the Pavement by Luis Rodriguez, and Michael Warr, W-A-R-R, had a book of poetry. I think Dwight Okita. There were a lot of locals. Carlos Cumpian, I think, published with Tia Chucha. And my first book, it was hard putting stuff together. I think I considered sending it to Tia Chucha and did not, because I figured I would just get rejected. But it was done. It was not at all impossible for people to gather the resources, whether singly as I did or in a consortium as many others did. There's and I think he's still active. I am not involved with the poetry scene at all anymore. A guy named David Getchik, who has a full list of all kinds of books written by Chicago authors and others, and he would always be at the fair at one of the tables. So that is the world as it was. I think one of the, as I say, we had prepared these big press kits. One of the people who got it was Dennis Johnson of future Melville House fame. And it was interesting. It's just a kind of synchronicity. He sent me a letter saying that he had seen lots of these self-pub authors' press kits, and he felt that mine was the best he had seen. But he, regardless, did not do anything as far as promoting my book. Turns out that he was then in the works of creating Melville House Publishers, and their first book was an anthology of poems directly responsive to the events of September 11th. So this is the story of the honest review that I got, and I thought that I would share it with you and with Pete, because I don't think there is anything to be afraid of or ashamed of in putting out an honest review. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.